example on this thing. The guy that they relied on for the study on the diesel engine rule faked his PhD. An epidemiologist at UCLA corrected the record. They quote-unquote disciplined the guy, but they let the rule stand. These trucks, the farm equipment, the trucks, the construction equipment is being regulated out of business on the basis of junk science.
What a country!
This one rule, this California Air Resources Board rule is going to cost the California economy over $20 billion, and thousands of people are going to be out of work. Thousands of people are going to lose everything they've ever worked for and lose their business and their job at the same time. And the question is who's going to tell Arnold? Are you? The mainstay of our local economy is agriculture. Ag's going to also be affected by this diesel engine rule. But another unelected board of political appointees of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who sit on the Regional Water Quality Control Board, have arbitrarily decided that the water that runs off of a field into a ditch, we're talking ditch water, folks, that water has to be cleaner than drinking water standards with regard to some pollutants, 10 times cleaner in terms of nitrates. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't get my water from a ditch, and yet that's where they set the standard. Now, you know what they set the standard at? They set the standard at the pollutant level that kills a flea. I'm not making this up. I don't care if the flea dies. I want the farmers to keep producing our food. But they're not going to be able to they will not be able to capture and treat their water runoff because it's even water runoff from a storm. In our region, they do drip irrigation. We don't even have runoff for most of these fields. And in a storm, they won't be able to stop that water. They won't be able to treat that water. They're out of business. And again, an unelected, unaccountable regulatory body. Now, these same guys are turning, they want a parking lot like this. If this parking lot was built today, they would say that no water can run off this parking lot. It didn't run off if the field was vacant. That's the standards they're setting. They're going to kill the construction industry, development, and ag. Then you go on to land. Do you know that in Santa Barbara County we have more endangered species listed in our county than any other county in the continental United States? We have more endangered species in this county than most states combined. Did you know that almost the entire North County is declared habitat for one species or another? The good folks out at the Hitching Post restaurant in Casmalia, great steakhouse. Let me give you an example of how stupid our regulatory regime is. There's a bridge that used to connect Wampus and Casmalia. There's a culvert underneath this bridge. And that bridge every once in a while get plugged up with crud and mud and everything else. In the old days, they used to just put sticks of dynamite out there and blow the crud out of there and went to the Hitching Post, had dinner, and called it a day. And now what happened is because of the Endangered Species Act, nobody could get a permit to even take equipment or shovels or anything out down there because of what they call the unarmored three-spine stickleback fish. I don't know what the hell that is. I don't care what it is. But the fact is they couldn't get a permit. So the culvert plugged, the water went over the bridge, and after the water subsided and the mud dried, guess what? They said, you know what? We now declare that road habitat for that fish. That is why the Lompoc-Casmalia Road is closed to this day, is because they declared a dry river bridge crossing. The top of it, not the bottom of it, is habitat for a fish. And this is the kind of stuff that's going on all over the place. Tiger salamanders. Do you know why we don't have more tiger salamanders here? It's because we only get 10 inches of rain. They've got so many of them in Minnesota that they sell them as fish bait. But here they're endangered. It's not because of farmers and ranchers, it's because we don't get enough rain. And yet 200,000 acres of our land is now confiscated to save the tiger salamander. Folks, these are just a few of the regulations that are preventing people from making a living through their hard work and investment. Apart from taxation, and these are not the only problems that we face. Consider the fact that California was in a recession before the rest of the nation was in a recession, and part of that was the regulatory climate. But even when the economy was booming, they spent us into a deficit of tens of billions of dollars. This $60 billion deficit didn't hit this last year. They've been building it, lying and cheating their way through fake budgets for the last couple of years. And now they tell us they have no choice but to raise taxes. Now listen carefully, and I don't want to be offensive, but I've got to say this. Right now, we're letting prisoners out of jails and prisons because our elected officials say they cannot afford to keep these people locked up. Look at this, in Lompoc, taxpayers are forking out $30,000 a month to house and guard a sexually violent predator on a 20-acre estate. $30,000 a month. Now how come this guy that left his last known victim, a 3-year-old, he left him to die in the wilderness, how come we can afford that? That is over $300,000 a year. How many more of these animals are we sporting throughout the state of California? That's just one of them. You know what I wish we would do with this predator? I wish we would rent the house next door to the judge who signed his release from prison. Or better yet, the psychiatrist that let him out of Atascadero State Hospital not once but twice.
How about his children?
Do you have your plungers? Should we keep our money or pay higher taxes? Do you want jobs or junk science? Do you choose a farmer or a flea? What would you prefer, a prison cell or a private estate for a pervert? Please listen to me carefully. Samuel Adams says, it does not take a majority to prevail. There's 100,000 people that live in this valley. We probably have probably about 1,500 people here now. We're not a majority. We're not a majority yet. But it doesn't, Samuel Adams said, and this isn't the guy that made the beer. Okay? We're talking about one of the founding fathers.
Adams said everybody has a right to have a hearing upon petitioning. You had a right upon handing a petition. Now, John Quincy Adams, this is after he was president, he went back to the House of Commons, or the House in Massachusetts, and they had 749 people. And they could hear everybody's grievances. They had capacity. However, John Calhoun won because after that, people lost the right to petition their reps. Used to be you had a right to petition your legislature, and they had to have a hearing on that. It's so ingrained in American history. Well, the governor appointed the judges, or the Crown appointed the judges, and well, the colonists didn't go to the courts because, well, the courts were pretty corrupt. They were English judges, and it just didn't work for them.
Corrupt courts? You mean they had corrupt courts 200 years ago?
Yeah, it was pretty openly recognized they were corrupt. So what they did was petition their assembly, and the assembly would deal with the problems, and they would deal with it fairly. Because if you didn't deal with the problem fairly, what would happen is they could appeal to the Crown. The Crown would send a ship, and the ship would be loaded with soldiers.